Hello and welcome to another one of our addas late at night. That's when I can get my high-profile guests for pro bono for free on my channel,
But how much of a
and because they are free, also, uh, Sandip Ghose has been doing the TV studio rounds today, and got into. I saw a bit of it, couldn't watch all of it. There's a celebration at home, but. Yes, so I did watch the some of the heated discussion you had on Barkha's show, which I found the title of the show really interesting, Sandeep. It was like, the prime minister needs to speak up now, and I'm like, why do all roads lead to the prime minister?
That's what I told Mr. Ribeiro when he was saying that. I said, Mr. Ribeiro, with due deference, you would recall your days of service when many times the chief minister would have spoken to you as the head of the police or whatever that please take care of this, and he would have remained silent. So, how do you know what the prime minister has been speaking to his security staff or the home minister? You don't expect the prime minister, for a variety of reasons. Sometimes discretion is the better part of politics, if not valor, not to speak out. I said, how would you like if the prime minister were to speak today and reprimand this Jharkhand, leader for speaking out against the Hindu community? He cannot be speaking against everybody. So, for any little thing, I think that's coming from somebody as experienced and as seasoned as Mr. Ribeiro was a bit surprising. I can understand, other people making such demands, but the prime minister cannot be speaking on everything.
And what I found even more surprising is that he's been a top police officer. Are you trying to tell me that he's not encountered communal violence during his long career? In fact,
Yeah,
I would go say that we've seen small communal flare ups, but back in the day, we used to see massive violence.
no,
I remember school being shut for days because of communal violence.
no, you must grant, I would give him cut some amount of slack for him for his age. But he later on did mention that he has seen many communal violences and
Yes.
riots during his long career. I didn't want to point that out to him, but he himself mentioned that in passing later on.
Hmm. Abhijit, thanks for joining us. Of course, I mean, I'm going to ask my producer to put up Padma Lakshmi's tweet, which really got us going because, I mean, here's somebody who's like the host of Top Chef, was married to Rushdie. So I'm sure she's aware of the fact that Rushdie's book, Satanic Verses, was banned in India because, there was a fatwa against him, etc., and all kinds
I
of
don't know,
intolerance that went on.
Abhijit,
And hmm.
somebody, I don't know whether you saw that tweet. I commented on it saying that isn't Padma Lakshmi Suhail Seth's girlfriend?
What?
No, she is not Suhail Seth's girlfriend. Uh,
Talk about going off topic, yeah. Although Suhail
uh,
is in New York right now, for all you know, he said over dinner he told Padma, "Why don't you tweet a little bit about this? Stir the pot."
I did with.
Suhail, Suhail's wife is Lakshmi, but it's not Padma Lakshmi. Uh,
But Suhail is in
now,
New
now
York right
look,
now.
I think, don't you think it really shows up our inferiority complex that we need the validation of some cook show host and mediocre author just because she's an Indian origin person uh, to validate ourselves.
But it's not validation, is it? I mean, she starts a tweet saying, "As a Hindu." And I'm just like, what's this as a Hindu? Then surely you must have noticed what's been
Well,
happening to
look,
Hindus in the subcontinent.
look. So here's the problem. Jayachand was also a Hindu. So what?
but that's where she's trying to bring in her sort of street cred for commenting on this, and the I'm the better Hindu sort of thing. When I think
But
I mean,
again, tell me something. How does it matter if she's a Hindu, not a Hindu, whatever? Why is she a source of validation?
no, it's not necessarily that she is the source of validation. It is a sequence of events, okay, wherein there is this international churn. You had the US CIRF or ICRF or whatever they are, put us on the watch list again. They did it last year, they did it again now, and that entire body has such deep connections to the Pakistani establishment and FI and all of those things, which has been exposed by our media. So you had that happen. You have
Yeah.
this, your favorite Rana Ayub going to New York or going to Italy or somewhere and speaking about, the
I
terrible
don't know if you've
atmosphere.
seen. I don't know if
Something,
you've seen the
something
tweet thread.
happened.
Disinfo Lab has put out the tweet where they've connected her directly to the ISI. Did you know that?
No, I haven't seen that. Producer, can you find
She
that?
has. I'm going to DM the thread. Actually, let me WhatsApp the thread to you. She is she's taking part in conferences that are directly sponsored by the ISI. She may know or she may not know it, but she should know that one of the sponsors who has been there, which is open, is a guy called Losar, who is this Jamaat-e Islami Pakistan's MP. And everybody knows that Jamaat-e Islami Pakistan is a direct ISI manipulated front. If you don't know that, then you're not a very good journalist, are you? So, yeah. So, again, now, yeah, I've sent it to you.
We'll take a look at
what
it.
happens here is...
So can you tell us a little bit about this body that you're talking about? This who's debunked her?
It's a very long thread. Go through it because it's really quite scary.
I want to know a little bit about Disinfo Lab. That's what I'm asking about.
Oh, so Disinfo Lab is this person, nobody knows who it is, but he or she has done some amazing investigative work. These OSINT guys, like those guys, Agent Vinod, Akshat Deora, Hawkeye, and people like that, and Vikas Pandey, who exposed Rana Ayub's. ED never wanted to go after Rana Ayub. It was only after these people started pointing out the inconsistencies in auditing that the ED went after Rana Ayub. Remember, Alt News keeps asking for money. These were the guys that showed that they've got a 1.7 to 2.7 crore slush fund stacked up where they don't actually need the money. Right? So, so again, let's come back to the topic here, Padma Lakshmi. Who is Padma Lakshmi? I mean, honestly, if I were to give you tips on how to dress, you'll get me on a program on geopolitics or politics or food. Would you get me on a program on singing? Would you get me a program on Hindi movies? Would you get me on a program on women's clothes?
You just might on that.
Well, I would really pity you. I would really pity you and the host of that program if you got me.
We have already seen you on women's clothes in this show, remember?
Yeah, you have. But I mean, seriously, serious discussion. So assume
he got you on that.
Yeah, so assume you're interviewing somebody really cool, like who's the big fashion designer? Rohit Bal, and who's new
Manish
fashion designer?
Malhotra.
Manish Malhotra and Rohit Bal. Would you
Nice
get
guy,
me on trends in fashion design? Especially if, say, the third guest was Anna Wintour.
Anyway, Abhijit, don't try to cover up now.
Yeah.
You're trying very hard to do that. But the point taken, The issue is what I think, Abhijit, it's not a question of validation. As I have written in my article, there is a toolkit or a script operating. There are
Right.
people who are seeking out names which are recognized. Earlier, they got Greta Thunberg and people like that. But today, they're looking at okay, if a Padma Lakshmi resonates with some, and with
Exactly.
to some people, they don't know whether Padma Lakshmi is in London or Padma Lakshmi is in New York, and apart from being whether she's Suhail's girlfriend or not. But just the name kind of registers. And so they're looking at these names. Padma Lakshmi, somebody who tweeted, I think Advaita tweeted that, can you name which are the instances of, where there has been this Muslim victimization? And I'm sure she cannot. And I don't think she's responded to that tweet.
She
She
won't.
has, she doesn't have an idea. Okay. But Abhijit, just to score a point on you, I must tell you that I had the privilege of having lunch and dinner with Padma Lakshmi when she was with Salman Rushdie at the
Oh, dear.
Bengal, Calcutta. And what I credit her for is Salman Rushdie referred to somebody saying, "Oh, he is a womanizer," and she pulled him up. Said, "Is that you saying it?" And Salman Rushdie.
No, but like our viewers are pointing out, Mesut, I don't follow football, but Mesut Ozil is supposedly a very famous Turkish footballer, and he's
German
tweeted.
footballer,
Oh,
German,
is it?
who
I
has
don't.
an
I don't
identity
follow.
crisis of
Okay.
Turkish origin.
All right.
I don't. I will not take Mesut Özil seriously at all for one very
Thirty
simple
thousand
reason.
retweets, though. Thirty
Yeah,
thousand
doesn't
retweets.
it? Look, it doesn't matter because he invited Erdogan for his wedding. And he got Erdogan to give the benediction to the couple and all of that. Okay, so I will never take any guy talking on human rights who invites an absolute monster like Erdogan, who kills his own people left, right, and center, who has thrown hundreds of thousands of his own compatriots into jail for political dissidents. And by the way, when he was kicked out of the German team, his performance had gone down to zero. And he played the typical Muslim victim card. Oh, I was kicked out because I was a Muslim. So see, he's that typical, low class, worthless, perpetually insecure types. Nothing
Chip on
can
the
be done
shoulder
about
kind of character.
it.
But
Again,
but
let's understand that two people tweeting at the same time means they've been paid a lot of money to tweet it. Okay, this is like Rihanna or whatever. They don't just tweet
yeah.
out of the blue. So clearly, these two have been paid to tweet it. And the problem is, we are the ones giving them more oxygen and giving them more attention. Who made Rana Ayub? The right wing made Rana Ayub. She wrote a book, but the right wing made her.
No, but that book was finding it hard to find a publisher. And because again, those tapes that
Yeah,
we
and when she self-published, when she self-published it, remember the whole lefty ecosystem turned out to support her and everything, and it was then that I bet you go through her followers, over 50% will be right-wingers just there to say whatever to her.
But the thing is, if you've noticed this subtlety, it's not the Indian left that really supports her, actually. There are few people, but it
So
isn't
the Indian
there
left,
really.
the Indian left does not support her. Do you know why? Because almost everybody in the left knows she's a fraud. Do you remember that time she put out that tweet saying, "Oh, thank you, Zubair. So lovely of you." Zubair didn't even acknowledge that tweet.
Yeah, there's something there. I don't know the inside
Why has she not written for Wire for so long?
So it's the same story, about they say Modi has a larger number of followers, but Rahul Gandhi has bigger engagement because who engages with Rahul Gandhi's tweets? It is the right
Yeah,
wingers who
The
do.
right thing that does. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. But that's a lesson I don't think the right wing will learn, right? That's the lesson they won't learn. And they're so trigger happy that they get baited so easily and immediately
But
get into.
understand, see, it's not good for the right wing, but
Yeah.
it's fantastic for the BJP. Because I'm telling you, the BJP went from an average of a 120 to 140 seat party. It was always a 120 to 140 seat party. Modi took it to over, say, 210 to 20 or so. Rahul Gandhi was responsible for at least 50 to 70 more seats. Rana Ayub is responsible for another 20 seats. I credit Rana Ayub 100, that jumped from 282 to 303. We have to salute Rana Ayub for giving them the 20 extra seats.
Why
I
this
don't think,
partiality toward Rana Ayub, Abhijit?
she's the BJP's second biggest vote getter.
Now,
Did you
I think,
notice
aren't you hyping her
when?
up also?
yeah, I think he.
No,
Yeah, that's
I think
exactly what you're doing. What you're
I
accusing
think
other people.
she is a paid BJP agent. I am convinced Rahul is the biggest BJP campaigner. I think
There's
as
a
a
lot of
single,
reasons for the second slot, Abhijit. Let's leave it at that. Let's come back to the whole issue of whether
Thank you.
Hindu, the topic which
yeah,
we started with, whether
yeah.
the are being maligned or that. Advaita, my point in that show, as well as in my article, has been that if they're talking about a hate campaign, the real hate campaign is against Modi. All these
Yeah.
people, any of these reactions, starting from 2014, are all driven by that is the bigger
Yeah.
hate campaign than anything else. And as you said, Julio Ribeiro has seen many communal riots, which he himself admitted on the show. And I don't want to talk about various other people listed in that, who are signatories in that list. Everyone at the point that they come up with these kind of things. In fact, I've gone on to say that they are accusing, others being on the following a toolkit. Actually, they could be inadvertently or otherwise be part of the toolkit of some activists. They said that BJP is outsourcing some of this violence to fringe groups. I said it could well be that some of these activist groups are outsourcing these letters to be signed by
Yeah.
these useful civil servants or intellectuals to get. And so it's the same story, who's writing this or getting Padma Lakshmi to tweet or various other people to do. It's part of a
Yes.
campaign.
Sandeep, that makes so much sense because, like, when we started the show, I said, I remember schools being shut for days because of communal violence. And we haven't seen that kind of violence that spreading across days, spreading across the country, all of that. We've not seen it in the last couple of years. The last one we saw was Muzaffarnagar. On that scale, so to speak. Yes, we've seen communal flare ups, but overall, we have not seen that. We've had a better security situation. So
Even
it's
in
you're absolutely right.
Gujarat, Advaita,
Modi campaign, yeah.
I was there happened to be in Baroda 2 weeks ago, and I was recalling to one of the colleagues. I remember as a young manager in the 80s when the entire banking system in Gujarat
Yeah.
was shut for more than a year, more than a month, or almost 2 months, and you people were you're younger, you probably were not born then, and it was shut. And that is the kind of communal violence which used to go on. Everything they know. So That's changed. Today, what used to happen earlier for days together in different parts of the country. And therefore, for people like Mr. Ribeiro, again, I say I would cut slack for his age, but other people to say these kind of things is highly disingenuous, if not, they're being outright biased or working on an agenda.
Yes, I think it's almost gotten to this point that Hindus are secular and welcoming if Modi is not in power. You know,
Exactly.
if Modi is in power, then Hindus are like the worst people stomping the earth. And that is
N-
this demonization of Hindus because of politics.
But
You
do you
know
know why they can't forgive Modi?
why?
It doesn't have to do with Godhra, it doesn't have to do with anything. It has to do with the fact that he's an OBC and that it's one of the biggest cases of social upward mobility that India has ever seen, from a tea seller to prime minister. They can't
Yeah,
deal with the fact that that alone busts their entire Hindutva, cruel, oppressive religion, Hinduism, cruel, oppressive religion nonsense. It busts this whole BJP is a Brahminical casteist party nonsense. Modi's existence as the prime minister is the biggest proof of their academic quackery that there is. And they have to wake up and deal with it every single day in a newspaper or in a TV show. Can you imagine your entire career and your life's worth being destroyed by the mere existence of one man? Therein lies their problem. He doesn't even have to open his mouth. Like, it's I am
that's the
OBC. I
issue,
am the
right?
prime minister. I am the prime minister of India. I am the son of a low income group family. Itself is like red cloth in front of a bull.
But that was the thing, right? When he said something, they dissect it. When he doesn't say something, they say he's saying nothing.
Yeah.
And I was
It's,
discussing, just to bring
I
this.
think I think the really interesting thing was a point that Sandip brought out in his piece, which was, what kind of bureaucrats do you have if they can't make a point with great specificity and data to back it up, and instead they ramble on and on and on rhetorical points.
Yeah.
Rhetoric is not a substitute for fact, and facts without context are not facts. So it's really sad the way you look at it. This is also a case of the régime ancien being disempowered. Most of these people were thick with the Congress.
Some
They
of
are
those
no
still
longer
are.
valued.
Still are.
Yeah.
In that list, there are
They're
a lot
not.
of.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So these are people who have been excluded from the gravy train.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know several people out there who are genuinely good people, and I really don't know why they've agreed to sign up on this. I don't get it.
Money?
No, this isn't money.
It's sometimes just
They're
goodwill.
extreme.
If you ask me
Yeah.
to sign something tomorrow, because
Yeah.
you're such a good friend, I will probably put my signature. I agree with Abhijit. I know of also similar people, and I can clearly trace the relationship. I know somebody who is a good buddy of one of those original signatories, and he would have said, like Sandeep, please sign it. He would have told X that jara sign kar de. To they have done it. Okay, if you are a neighbor and staying in IFS apartments, Mayur Vihar, you would probably talk to some of your ex-colleagues in the morning walk and they'll put their signature on it. It's a bit of them.
Hmm.
You don't let down your side.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if a friend asks you, you oblige. That's it. Uh,
But you know what? I mean, this is the other interesting thing. Okay, you first, of course, if you diplomacy, track one, track two, track three, etc. I almost feel like propaganda runs in a similar way. Because you had the whole situation with the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Guardian, kind of bringing out the Economist, bringing these frontal attacks to the forefront, and thinking that they would be able to impact, at the very least, business prospects or voter behavior. They realize that that ain't happening. This man is still winning elections. He's getting more powerful. He's getting more popular. So this almost feels like a track two, right? So you have these sort of as a Hindu, I'm saying this, or as somebody X, I'm saying that. I'm deeply concerned. So it's not even like when you say that, why is she talking about this, or what validation can she offer? The fact of the matter is that society is diverse, and there are diverse interest groups and stakeholders who look up to different people. So I almost feel like, from a soccer player to former model turned reality TV host to bureaucrat, to, of course, the political voice, Rahul Gandhi, who I think is in the United States as well, coincidentally, as is Priyanka Vadra.
As
It's
is,
almost like, as is Suhail Seth. And I asked him that. I said, "What are you doing in New York? Everyone else seems to be there as well." So he's like, "Are you mad? I'm just here." And then he went on. But, but the thing is that it seems very, very thought out. And of course,
absolutely.
this USCIRF, yeah. It's
So
not
these,
random. It's not like Padma Lakshmi woke up and read that article in the paper that she tweeted below and said, "Oh my God, this is really worrisome. I must talk about this." That's not what happened here. That's plain to see.
no, that's therefore there is a very, very, I think, well-oiled, or a machinery which is working now. Who is running that machinery? Whether it is your overseas Congress, or people of that group, or it is some other group in which Congress has been co-opted. All this is happening. So this cannot be, as you say, random. This is very, very systematic. And while some of the people who were on the show or signatories would try to connect the dots between 9 states having the same problem on Hanuman Jayanti or on Ram Navami, similarly, one can connect the dots out here, that these things are not happening randomly. And it's not just particularly for this incident. Whether you talk of the farmers' protest, or
Yeah.
any such thing, every time it happens in a very well choreographed, orchestrated manner.
exactly.
And and uh, it's certainly not, as you're saying, either spontaneous or random.
Hmm.
It's There would be
And,
too much.
yeah, and the other thing is that I cannot, in recent memory, recall a situation where there was a big issue every year that went global and it emanated from India. I was chatting with a friend who was on a brief visit to India from the United States, and he says, back in the day, we used to say, "You all are so talkative and argumentative in India, but no one really talks about you here." And he said, in the last couple of years, we are a conversation point now. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the West. And I mean, that's of course a plus. And there's also, this aspect to it.
Yes, certainly. So it's being done, and I hope only my only grouse about, and Abhijit can comment better about the government or the establishment, is apart from being dismissive, I think they can really do things to, in some form, influence the narrative. The
Hmm.
amount a small amount of budget from what our embassies and councils uh, devote on just simple entertainment. Uh, and, if they were to do that in some kind of systematic lobbying or engaging, people to do influencing the whole so-called the ecosystem over there, I think they can counter a lot of these issues. Um,
Hmm.
uh, but I don't think we are really organized or to tackle these things. We also tend to do that in a
We're not.
fairly, yeah.
And we kind of have our noses up when it comes to lobbying and things like that, but Pakistan does not have those reservations. In fact, even this CIRF or whatever it is, when it was when they were exposing their links, the lady, I think, who heads this particular organization or is a key player in it, has well established links to a lobbying firm that has taken up for the Pakistanis on numerous occasions, is what I read. So, Abhijit, how does this international lobbying nexus slash PR nexus work? And why is it that we in India are not able to crack it, or we're not even trying?
Look, Pakistan has an outstanding foreign service and planning. If you meet the diplomats in Washington, they'll run rings around our diplomats. The problem is they have a really bad case to settle.
Hmm.
Okay. In spite of that, in spite of all of that, they are damn good at their jobs. Okay. Now, this is where we come to the fundamental problem of the Modi government specifically. They don't realize when somebody is inadequate for the job, when a current system is inadequate for it. There is not a single international narrative that they have gotten ahead of and been able to beat back in the last 8 years.
Hmm.
Okay, and they think somehow winning elections conquers the narrative. It does not.
Hmm.
The second issue is these narratives, they force Hindus uh, into a siege mentality, which is great for the BJP.
Hmm.
But those
Hmm.
narratives continuing is extremely damaging to India.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this brings up the very disturbing question: is does the Modi government put its electoral success over the interests of the Indian nation? And that's a very worrying conclusion to draw. Because if the
But
people in 1 second, if the people in the PMO have not been able to, okay, and there's several redundancies. There's the PMO, there's the MEA, there's the INB ministry. Not one of them has been able to get ahead of an international narrative. Not one. They don't care. They leave it to somebody else to counter whatever.
hmm.
How much more compound incompetence are you going to tolerate? That's very problematic. Because this is one of the things where you can very confidently say, purely on empirics and statistics,
Hmm.
that losers and failures have not been held accountable for lapses of their job that they're paid to do.
Hmm. Hmm. But Abhijit, see, a political party has to win elections. You've said it so many times on the show that you may have all these criticisms of the BJP, but at the end of the day, you're going to go into that voting booth and press the lotus, because the alternative, when it comes to the nation's interests, is worse. Yes, there is a certain tardiness or an ineptitude when it comes to dealing with narratives on the international level. That admittedly is a reason, but then do they really need to focus on that area? And this is for Sandeep, when as recently as a few weeks ago, they were praising Indian democracy, and they wanted India on their side in that war against Russia with Ukraine, and they were talking about our shared values, etc. And a couple of weeks later, this sort of campaign starts. The USCIRF, which makes recommendations to the American president and the American government, has put us on the list last year, has put us back on the list this year. So these are people who seem to be very user friendly. I mean, our values are not called into question when they want us to join them in a war against Russia, and in fact then we're praised. But when it comes to this sort of bullying and this kind of moralizing, then they get activated again. So should we
See,
take them seriously?
no, see, the question is the Western powers have always been very, very self centric. And, to that extent, you would say self serving as well, there. But to that extent, in terms of policy, I think Indian government is doing pretty well. And I would think our stand throughout this process has been very correct. But where, as Abhijit was saying, what we are not doing is managing the surround sound. And some of us right wingers, or who are not right wingers, who are right of center, we get very excited with the few statements of Mr. Jaishankar and say he's the biggest thing or greatest thing to have happened to Indian, foreign policy or Indian and MEA establishment. But that's not enough. It has to be amplified and properly, cogently communicated elsewhere. And I don't think we even managed to communicate it to the diaspora. Forget, the larger audience over there. So we.
This is Sandeep, where I take exception, because I differ from you on that point, because the diaspora actually is predominantly pro Modi. In fact, this is reflected by the fact that democratic elected leaders who have sizable vote bases in the Indian community have established very good personal relationships with the prime minister. And of course we saw the bonhomie, the friendship. You just saw Boris do it. We've seen Trump do it in the past.
Yeah, you probably know this better, but my own sense is which portion of the diaspora there is.
Exactly.
Again, yeah. So there is this ethnic variety which they will, who are there assigned, but are the vocal ones who are the opinion makers, opinion leaders, not within the diaspora, but within the, the global ecosystem, so to speak. Are we having them with us? Are they really going out as brand ambassadors, or they come to India and say all the nice things, get some of the Padma Shris and other awards, and go back and then align with, so there's the Google or Microsoft or even Twitter, Parag, and other people, whether they're really they also are proud enough to see themselves representing India, the new India and the new world order. I'm not 100% sure of that. And we also we get also very carried away by some of these people coming and meeting Mr. Modi, or Mr. Modi going and visiting their facilities out there. But it's not really. I don't know how much weight they carry in terms of shaping the opinion of the establishments of the countries where they live in or operate in.
Yeah, I was
And
referring more to
just to add 1 second, I just
yeah.
want to add to that very quickly. Modi's connect is with a very specific sliver. That's the Guju diaspora. I have seen large, huge sections of the Bay Area non-Guju diaspora, Tamils, Andhra, overwhelmingly Andhra and Tamil, who are vitriolically anti-Modi. Okay. but the Patel Motel owners, as they're called, are very pro-Modi. Okay. The Sikhs. Tell me, where are the Sikh diaspora? It's one of the biggest diasporas in Canada. Where are they pro-Modi?
My God,
They're not.
but there's a predominant
so-
section of the Sikh diaspora in Canada which is very pro-Khalistani.
Not
So
just
I
Canada,
I
even
wouldn't
in
even
California.
anticipate that they would be.
And remember, in the
Even in
UK,
California, they are the people
the
who
only
funded
reason, so in the UK, what happened was, it was only when Labour went into full-on Hindu attack mode that Hindus who normally vote for Labour, who are not a big vote bank per se, but they're very powerful as financial funders for elections, got together and decided to deprive Labour of those votes. Well, at least the funding to get
And the
campaigning
money.
in order to get those votes and things like that, right? So even here, like Sandip says, you look at the loudest, the diaspora with the biggest megaphones. They are all vitriolically anti-Modi. But see, I don't care if you're pro-Modi or anti-Modi. Modi is just a vessel to get to the final goal. They're vitriolically anti-Hindu.
Yeah.
Okay, the same thing. So this is like this lady Taylor Lawrence of the Washington Post, one of the stupidest creatures you could ever come across, who, when she gets commented on Twitter, is apparently victimized and starts crying. But she decides to dox a Twitter handle called the Libs of TikTok, go after their family and expose her completely, which is technically against Twitter doxing policy. You're not allowed to dox people on Twitter. She is the cat's whiskers of journalism all of a sudden. And then when she gets attacked for doxing this person, she cries again and plays victim. So these people they will tell you that everything is Islamophobia, but what they do to Hindus is not Hinduphobia. Okay, so it's you have to understand there is a lot of money within India and outside India to be made to be the capo, to be the Judenrat. You know what a capo is, right? It was the Jewish police within the concentration camp that used to decide which of the Jews were going to go die. So when Israel, one of the first laws that Israel passed in 1950 was specifically targeted at Jews who had cooperated with Nazis to send Jews to the camp. There were lots. Nobody wants to talk about it, but there were lots.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of mentality. I need to survive. I need to thrive. It doesn't matter how stupid I sound or how disingenuous I am, like that Angana Chatterjee, Natasha Kaul. They will literally sit on the table with known terrorists and claim those terrorists are victim and Hindus are the nasty characters who made these people terrorists. It's a joke. It's honestly a joke.
Yeah.
See, Hindus have become, I think, in a way, I think they've become a proxy for this whole anti-Modi, anti-BJP, the sentiments. The people which, even Mr. Rivero today in the course of that said that, we were all part of the older establishment. He made the statement, people who have been part of the establishment or who have prospered in that establishment or beholden to that establishment, since they are, they detest the present regime and are hoping against hope that they can, uproot the regime or, upturn it. So what's the beating stick can you get out of it? The only thing they can find is this whole, the secular plea, an excuse. Because everything else today, Advaita, if people were to really do an objective and critical analysis, whether it's on foreign policy, whether it's on economy, whether it's on defense, India is actually doing far better.
I
Uh,
know.
Rest of the world and what it could have done under the previous regime. People realize this very well, but they want to distract and divert attention from that by focusing on these issues of, I get stunned when there's somebody on a panel talking about, oh, people are talking about genocide and da da da, all sorts of things. Like, where do you get it from? If some in isolation somebody in Hardwar has made a statement or 2 or 3 days, whereas you are willing to condone all kinds of statements made by different, whether it's a cleric in UP or a politician in Jharkhand, those things you're willing to, but there's some oddball who makes these sort of comments somewhere, and you expect the prime minister to send the police tomorrow to arrest him or ask him to shut up. That's not the way. In that way, a lot of people, should have been behind bars for all kinds of remarks they are making day in and day out.
But these are the same people also who are not only condoning, but they're denying also things like what happened in Kashmir. So they'll be at the forefront to denying an actual genocide that has taken place, or and and then being the predictors of future ones, which have not happened and will never happen by God's grace. But I mean, to go on, and I think Abhijit said it best on the last show when he said there are people in this country who are already fighting civil wars in their head, and it's so true. You can see it from their tweets every morning, spreading panic, creating chaos. And frankly, if you step out of Twitter and you move around in the real world, you'll find that things are pretty much the same.
Absolutely. That's what I said. Since 2014, people have been talking of genocide and pogrom, but and people threatened to leave the country in 2014, but they're all happily here in 2022, and when they sing the same tune, the same kind of rhetoric, but they're all happy to be here.
And the thing we should actually really worry about is the economy, and the fact that there are so many things being predicted for the next year, from real estate collapses or globally. I'm not just talking here, to the war in Russia and hence vegetable oil, the Ukraine Russian war. I mean, like, so many things that are going on in this world which really need attention. In fact, Abhijit, you called out Rahul Gandhi's tweet also, where he listed out all these motor companies and said that they're exiting because of the hate in Modi's India. Now, I love cars, and I mean, I was sad that Ford went. I do like the big American, sturdy, big cars. But they didn't go because of hate in India. They went because their cars weren't selling.
Yeah. Look, we have very bad car laws in India. Okay. The regulation is shambles. But there's huge profits to be made if you know your market. The biggest seller in the Ford stable was the EcoSport. It was, 2-3 years running, it was the biggest selling car in India, period.
Before the Creta and all came. Yeah.
And they never upgraded it properly. They treated the Indian consumer like a cash cow that you'll keep buying the same product if I just put a 7-inch screen into it and give you nothing else on top of it. Okay. And the Endeavour was honestly out of the kind of price range for what you'd expect for an SUV in India. Unfortunately, you also see Toyota going this way with the Innova. When you take your best seller, you refuse to understand the market. Do you know when the Innova first came out? It used to sell from between 7 to 11 lakhs.
Yes, I remember when it first came.
7 to 11 lakhs. Today on road is around 30.
Look at the Fortuner. It's like touching 50 on road. I mean,
50. It's not worth that. It's not worth that.
Yeah, it's not. Why wouldn't you go in
You
for a
look
luxury
at
car?
Honda, the Brio and things like that sold so amazingly well. You've gone and made it ugly as hell, number one. And two, your dashboard and interiors are so bad. They're nowhere near the industry standard available. Now look how big Nexon's sales were. Tata Nexon. And I'm taking an Indian company at this, where they forget what it is to please the consumer. The moment Mahindra launches this XUV 722 lakhs,
Oh, I love it. Huh.
with all the features of a Mercedes S-Class, including a double LCD screen and those, indoor seat adjust and all of that,
I'm getting
they
one.
are now booked out for 2 years almost now.
I'm getting. Yeah.
Congratulations. Very good choice.
Yeah.
And what it's done is it's killed off the sales of the Tata Harrier, which was a very pretty car, but Tata was getting lazy without upgrading the interface and things like that. They were just going on with the same thing. And nobody wants to buy the relaunched Safari anymore. Because look, the Indian consumer realizes you're being taken for a ride. Right. Now, you want to simplify it. Rahul's tweet reminded me of his infamous interview with Arnab Goswami, which he still has not been able to forgive Arnab Goswami for, which is the interview he is convinced lost him the 2014 election. Where any time Arnab would ask him, do you prefer apples and oranges? He would say, see, what do apples and oranges? Women's empowerment.
And
does the sun rise in the east is the Pope Catholic? But what does that have to do with women's empowerment? Some idiot on his staff would have told him, see, a good interviewer is a man who ultimately turns around the question and brings it to what you want to talk about. And I think it was given to him as a last-minute lesson, and he was given the theory, but he wasn't given the practicals. He read lab theory. He read lab theory that, acid plus alkali makes a salt, whatever. But nobody taught him ki, ye sab karna padta hai and things like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do with. He is so disassociated, disconnected. And this is the big problem. PK came up with a chart to get them out of it because Sonia and Priyanka were like, look, we need a fresh face. Rahul never wanted PK back. Like Pallavi was saying yesterday. And because PK has left them in the lurch and played dirty politics the way he has, Rahul is going to come back even stronger with more of these
vitriolic attacks.
Alu, Sona, gems. And I mean,
want to do that again?
He will
want to make memes.
Sure. So the thing is, he was actually doing that about Modi. His thing was कि मोदी आपसे झूठ बोल रहे हैं, मोदी बोल रहे हैं, मैं इधर आलू डालूंगा, इधर सोना निकलेगा, आलू, सोना. And the BJP are so smart, इतने हरामी लोग हैं, that they turned it around and made it a meme on him. And the poor man can't get away from it now.
Yeah.
It hangs around his neck. I mean, at least think things through. Then there was this ridiculous logic that he was giving you last week of what I know that you are wrong and I am right. But then inside me, I know I am right and you are wrong. But I can't bring myself to say that. And I say you are right and I am wrong. I didn't even understand what the hell he was trying to say. If either of you understood what was being said, please raise your hand.
Not quite. Sandip looks like he's ready to sleep.
Anyway, I think Rahul Gandhi keep us
I just
awake.
tweeted that we used the Alu Sona part of the conversation and our viewership has gone up.
See, Abha Shukla has made a very important point. Reminds me of the iconic Gajamudra dance by Abhijit. This isn't the Gajamudra dance, but this is the Gajamudra dance.
Yeah, let me show you. Yeah.
But anyway, Rahul Gandhi should be more worried about
Gajamudra dance.
Okay, the Gajamudra is the waving of the hand like a trunk. Okay.
And the ear. So it's the year and the trunk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I learned
Worry
about
about
your
congresspersons leaving Congress rather than automobile companies leaving India, but he's always got his priorities wrong. So what can we do?
So our viewers are asking questions. So send your questions quickly because we'll wrap up in 5 minutes. One is from Monlike, who wants to know that uh, I'm not sure about the veracity of this, but basically you can read it on the screen. He's saying that Akar, Rana, etc. are going around asking for sanctions on India. I don't know if it's actually happening. It's quite shocking if it is. Why isn't our government doing anything? And what can we do as normal citizens to bring this to the
look,
government's notice?
calling for sanctions on India is not a crime. There's literally nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you should do about it. Because in private, almost everybody knows that these people are frauds. There is not a single government, including the Pakistani government, that does not know that Akar and Rana are frauds. Okay, the problem is the press, the Western press needs a story to sell. So they are going after their profits. It'll be used against us when the political winds change, but it won't matter as long as the political winds are on our side.
You mean domestically it'll be used against us?
No, it'll be used against us. Assume that somehow we go into the Chinese camp tomorrow. It's the way, when the Halabja in 1982 or 84, when the Halabja chemical attack took place, or 87, I forget. America went out of its way to prove that Iranians had carried out the gassing of the Kurds. And the moment Saddam Hussein then invaded Kuwait, and they wanted to kick him out, they suddenly immediately changed their line, and there was no more equivalence and goalpost shifting. It was, you killed the Kurds. So it'll be, we know there's no genocide going on till you get into the Chinese camp and like, see, you've been killing your Muslims. There's nothing you can do about it realistically. I mean, it helps countering the narrative when it happens, but look, this is a very tactical government. They live in the here and the now. On these things, I think their vernacular and parochial upbringing really is a huge negative, where they get taken for a ride by a foreign service whose training and education was set up for the highest rungs of society. But because of the great social churn we have seen since 1991, it is a syllabus that is no longer able to pick good diplomats anymore. It is not a syllabus that's able to train good diplomats anymore. The ones that are good get through the cracks. Sure, law of averages.
But I've got to say, I don't know, how much of it is posturing, how much of it is diplomacy, whatever it may be. I do like the fact that Jaishankar is saying some things out loud. And I think that's
this is exactly the problem, Advaita. A glib talk. He's quite glib.
Nothing wrong with that. He's a diplomat. He should be glib.
No, a diplomat. He is the foreign minister. He is the foreign minister. Okay, he is not just a diplomat. He is also an administrator and a bureaucrat. Remember, being glib is great for a spokesperson of the MEA. Unfortunately, the MEA spokesperson is anything but glib. Okay, it seems like Jaishankar is doing the job of the spokesperson MEA, and the MEA spokesperson is doing nobody's job, except extending Hannah Ellis Peterson's of the Guardian's visa.
She's the one you said who's going around saying that I'm going to.
She's going to bring down the government and all that crap.
Like now, that, yeah.
First, you need. How do you have a what is called strategic independence or strategic this thing? You build up self-reliance on information and data gathering. For that, you need a large foreign service. It needs to be about 3,000 to 3,500 people. You had 700 odd people when he was foreign secretary. Now that he's foreign minister, it's come down to 600 odd people. It shrunk. I know a UN representative of India who goes around becoming a celebrity. In private, not in private, in public, in diplomatic parties, she'll go around calling Modi a fascist. Indian rep.
You're serious?
Yeah. Fascist government.
Where she posted?
Zero
You can
accountability.
text it.
Zero accountability. Zero monitoring. Zero counter-espionage, counter-intelligence on bureaucrats and diplomats. Again, the visa extension of the Guardian lady, British ambassadors promised some Oxbridge scholarship to some Babu's child.
Okay, and people now want Sandip to speak, and then we'll close it out.
No, I've heard Abhijit, everything. I think what we are saying, this is a part of ongoing conversation we must have. In whatever limited way we can, we must bring home these messages to people who matter, because I think we've all, in various contexts, we keep saying communication is the biggest, weak point in the chain of this government, and it's
Yeah.
on all fronts. And people, they need to wake up to it. They just can't continue on a complacent note that we'll do what we have to, and others will fall in line. Thanks so much, Advaita, for this.
Thank you. On that sobering note, let's call it a night. I thought we'll only do this for half an hour, but it got so interesting. That
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
You don't look like one of those one trap kids. You
I
don't even
so
try
do.
to take it.
I have blonde hair and blue eyes.
Thank you so much, Advaita. Good night.
Good
Tata,
night.
guys.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. See you soon. Like,
Bye.
share.